We acknowledge the original owners of the land on which we podcast, whose stories were told for thousands of years. Today, we are recording in Meanjin. We pay our respects to elders past and present who may be listening. Sovereignty was never ceded. A quick note before we get started that there may be some swearing in today's podcast. If you don't like swearing or usually listen with children in the car, you have been warned. You're listening to What in the NDIS Now, a podcast where I, Hannah Redford, and my friend Sam Rosenbaum interview participants and providers about all things NDIS. Hey, Sam.
Hello.
Welcome to my house.
Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
Yes.
It's nice actually sitting around a table and actually talking into some microphones rather than being in Sydney with Tradie being up here.
Yes, the guests have gotten to come to my house before you have.
I won't hold jealousy there.
Yep. So we're going to do a few items of breaking news first to kickstart today's
there's lots been coming out.
Yeah, so the first thing is that early childhood, early intervention, which happens under the NDIS for anyone under 7, from the 1st of July will now be moved to under 9s.
Yes, exciting.
What do you think, what kind of impact do you think that's going to have on people?
Well, it's going to expand out the supports for the families with kids with autism, living on the spectrum, with ID and impaired capacity. That's going to give them more supports to help build those foundations and get the groundwork in. So then hopefully the idea with early intervention was to get in early to build those supports to reduce the need long term. So having those extra 2 years is fantastic for those families to be able to maintain that, because everyone knows when you lose a support or a support changes, it's a big difference there. And 7's still a very early point in a child's development. Yes. Remembering back to my thing, I think I was still developing a long time. Still am developing. But yeah, it does mean that they'll be able to retain that support for a lot longer to help support the family, continue on with the child's goals, development, growth, working with schools and different the community elements and mainstream, to be able to work towards getting it done, so then we can get onto mainstream supports or move into mainstream NDIS supports.
Okay. Cool.
Lots of double up words there on support. Anyway.
That's okay.
It's Friday.
I think you got it in a nutshell, so that's great. And so just announced on the 7th of June was the NDIS now will accept preferred names and pronouns and your gender. So they do have one tiny caveat that I'm not so excited about with this, is that still when you call the call centre, they need your legal name. So you still have to dead name yourself. However, as I was saying to someone earlier today, look, I think a tiny incremental change is better than no change, but it would be good if they could go the whole hog. Yes. So there's a fact sheet on the website all about it. There is also a form to fill in, and you can even give them your preferred title. They've got MX in there, so that's a bit exciting. So essentially what it's going to mean is that on your plan and with the plan manager, they can now have your preferred name and pronouns, which I think is really, really good, because
a
one
big
of the
step
things
in the right direction
that we we have found difficult is, although, a lot of our participants, we call them by their preferred names, but when it comes to sending an invoice, we have to write their gender name, and it always feels awkward, because it just feels disrespectful to me, and so I'm seriously excited by this.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of your participants would be quite encouraged by this as well. Yeah. I hope. It's definitely a move in the right direction. Definitely needs improvement on that piece, because if you've got a preferred name, that's the name you want to be using, and they have other ways of identifying you as well. So hopefully they do make that next leap and drop that part after they've done the legal side of things. Coming from me, I understand all the legal and the privacy and the need to ensure that you're talking to the right person. But anyone that's been scammed knows that it's easy to pretend you're that person as well. So whatever sort of justification they're sort of leveraging in the back to keep that going, I think we'll collectively be a lot happier when they get over that.
Changing your legal name is a few $100s. And for some people, that's not much money. But for a lot of my participants, it is a heck of a lot of money.
Yeah.
And especially when you're on the DSP and there's really no wiggle room. So doing a preferred name is really all you sort of have got, because to legally change it takes a heck of a lot of also dealing with official forms and government departments, and I think a lot of people don't really realise just how tricky that truly is. So it's good.
Yeah.
And that was our segment on breaking news.
Well, yeah, there's a bit going on, and so there with the review as well. So, and we just had the DSC conference.
Yes, which you were able to attend.
I was lucky enough to be able to go along down to Sydney and spend 2 days with the DSC team and get to network with some people and lots of really good providers. Hear from some fantastic guest speakers. There was a really good vibe in the room. From what we understand, the online chat for those viewers online was going off quite a fair bit.
Yeah.
And I think DSC did a fantastic job of it, putting together the lineup, putting together the whole conference. It was really good for everyone that attended, and I hope the people online as well got a lot out of it. There was some really big standout events. So there was a lady by the name of Alice Patton, that's it. Alice is a First Nations advocate, and she was speaking about the need for improved culturally safe supports. And she raised this idea for the agency to bring in a bucket of funding that was very specific to culturally and linguistically diverse communities to help support and implement culturally safe practices within the supports. So it's to help pay providers to provide that support that individual participant needs based on their cultural requirements. So that's a big step in moving forward to getting real person-centered supports where it's still financially viable for the provider to be able to do so. Because providers that are listening, they would know that trying to do all these back-end sort of training infrastructure, we have a lot of heart and really want to do a good job, but actually to be able to pay, implement, train, and continually improve in very specific areas like culturally safe supports, it's a very expensive and costly and time emphasis project. That and not every provider also has culturally and linguistically diverse participants. So it's where that anyone that wants to go to any kind of provider, they can choose that provider, and they can be rest assured that provider has the ability to also provide that culturally safe supports. So it's good for areas where you might be not have those kind of support infrastructures that automatically know your culture, your religion, your background, where you come from. So then you can go choose a provider and go, hey, look, I want you to do this, and then they can work with you, and it's not a financial burden on that provider either to be able to have to uplift a whole staff team to work with that just one individual participant, which I think is a really good and positive thing, and I really hope the agency take it on board.
Yeah, I think that sounds amazing. And I think it's great that emphasis on for First Nations participants in the first place, but also for some participants that I've either had or my friends have had, that for example, I have a male participant who will only deal with males and will not have even female doctors or
Yeah.
anyone like that around because culturally they can't do that.
Yeah.
And it's really important that those support workers understand that and can advocate and be
Yeah.
there and say, no, we need a male doctor
Yeah.
to come in here or a male nurse or
100%.
whatever. And I'm just really excited to see how this plays out, and I would really love to see it.
Yes. You and me both, and I think many First Nations and culturally diverse families are screaming for this. So
Yeah.
let's just hope that the agency and Minister Shorten takes it on board and gets the ball rolling with that, because that was the best idea I've heard come out regarding changes to NDIS the last 2 years.
Absolutely.
Can't think of anything better.
Yeah. So I think you also said some issues on staffing.
Yeah, well, providers will know that it's a bit of a... The question was posed by the panel, how many providers in the room do you agree that we're a workforce in a crisis? And it was a very interesting response. There was a good portion that hands went up as high as they could get them. There was a few that were sort of like half-heartedly raising their hand like they've got, but they're just not too sure. And then there was still a decent amount not raising their hands for it. So it's very interesting because there's clearly a workforce shortage. Like the gig process is not being nice to providers. It's having a big impact on providers' ability to retain, attract as staff. And it's also having the same thing flow-on effect for participants trying to find workers as well. So I would say that we possibly are a workforce in a crisis. Is it manageable and resolvable? Yes, definitely. How that exactly works is a different question, and what sort of stuff that the NDIA does, that the government does, and that individual providers do, and to an extent individual workers as well, because gig work, as good as it can be, has some really big risk factors that I don't think a lot of independent support workers fully appreciate or realize. There is, I know quite a lot of independent workers that don't have insurance on day one.
Oh my goodness.
Because they weren't too sure if they needed to do it, because they were contracting with another provider and that provider didn't ask that question.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, that cringiness. For those of you playing at home, there is cringeworthiness happening all over Hannah's face.
Yep.
It reflects my sentiments on it quite well.
In my humble little opinion, I think it's absolutely a workforce in crisis. I think there's a number of issues. So number one is in the last quarterly report, it said we're just about to hit 600,000 participants on the NDIS. And in that case, we need something in the realms of another 100,000 support workers. And I don't know where these people are going to come from. And then the second issue is that a lot of these support workers can be well-meaning, but they're really poorly trained. And that irritates me to no end, because one of the things they really forget is that their job is in capacity building, where it can be capacity built, and also about privacy and confidentiality is just a huge one I see constantly. One of the biggest things I see constantly violated. They talk about their participants, they give far too many details to their friends or whatever, and I just it
it's my
is
biggest
just
pet hate.
so annoying.
Biggest pet hate.
And so I think some of those issues need to be addressed, and along with that, education would be you must have insurance.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot work without a working with children's card or a disability yellow card in Queensland.
Yeah. But I think the weird thing that the agency, on that note around working with kids, because the requirement of the agency, if you're a non-registered provider, you don't have to have that. You're not required to. The real stark difference is with the state legislation, where so Queensland wants you to has a no card no start law. So if you're working with children, you need to have that working with children's card. And it's not you're waiting for the application to go through. It's you're needing to have the workers' children check in your hand before day one. And and I see that happening quite a lot where, the application's just in and it'll be okay. And then it's never followed up. And next thing you know, you're 3 months in, you've got you pass the probation period and you have a worker in your employment that you doesn't have the right working screening. And the price, the fines that are applicable to providers are like above $50,000.
Gosh.
That's a minimum. I think the minimum is around the 63,000 mark.
Wow.
So when you look at it from a workforce, and that's per case. So if you're having really bad workers screening processes and you're not following the risk assessed role process, then you're potentially like up for millions of dollars if you're not looking at your worker screening and not paying attention to the state-based requirements for the participants that you're working with in those states.
And some of those laws still apply to independents.
Correct.
Like flipping insurance. You must have insurance before you start working with a participant.
Yeah. As an independent.
Yeah, as an independent.
If you're working as an employee, you better hope that your boss has got that sorted for you.
Yeah. Yes.
And work cover while you're at it.
So, one of the things that have come up recently is about chat GPT.
Oh, yeah.
Which for some reason I always stumble over saying.
Yeah, it's not the easiest thing to come out with ChatGPT.
So what do you see as some of the issues with the way people are using ChatGPT?
I don't see issues as much as privacy concerns.
Yeah.
So there are some serious privacy concerns that underlay it because you're essentially using a computer AI. So if you're going to be using it, you need to be careful not to be putting people's names, people's locations, essentially redact the hell out of everything you're using it for. But there are some really exciting, positive things that it can have application for. So, for example, writing a summary report of your case notes. So what you get to do is get the case notes, making sure that there's no names and taking that personal identification element out of it. But summarize this, and you plug in, copy and paste the information there. Press a button, and it'll summarize it nice. So then you can do a one-pager summary for it. Stuff like helping to write reports as well is something. So Sam from the growing space has been playing around with this idea for a while now, and she had a session on it at the conference, and it was really exciting. I think there's lots of potential. I think there's also a little bit of the scary element because you're playing with information, you're playing with the internet, and you're playing with artificial intelligence. And my cousin set up a foundation in Los Angeles that is around essentially keeping the AI, like the framework and regulations on how AI instruments. It's really interesting, well and truly out of my technical expertise. But I'm glad that there's people in the world that are looking at this sort of stuff and how the potential flow and effects. But it does pose some really interesting ways for providers to be able to expand on utilizing this to increase productivity and increase understanding.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. I personally am trying to use it to write some policies for me and see how it goes. So I'll let you know when I come on, when we're on next time about how successful I was in that. But Sam gave me the idea of like challenging us on different ways to use it. So my sort of bread and butter is a lot around policy. So be interesting to see how it will help in that sort of space. And I'm very excited to see what Sam and the rest of the Going Space team and different support coordinators use it for.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for that. Now, one of the things at the conference was a bit of a sneak preview of what's been happening with the NDIS review that is due out later this year.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that you have brought up with me is around the pricing arrangements.
Yeah.
And I wanted to touch on this really quickly before we sort of move on. Because one of the things that I think is really important for anyone who is an independent, but also providers who are in a company sense, because sometimes they forget that the pricing arrangements document is meant to say only what is the maximum.
Yeah.
It does not say this is what you have to charge.
Yeah.
There is so many times where I've gone to a provider and they go, "Oh, but I have to charge this amount."
No, this is probably my fundamental pet hate of the whole scheme is the failure to put a recommended wholesale price or recommended retail price, like we do with Big W and wholesales and that sort of stuff. They set a max, but didn't put a standard.
Yeah.
Which meant we had nothing to baseline it on, which means that everyone automatically goes straight to the maximum because it's the maximum limit. Apparently they've gone in and done their calculations and figures and went, this is the max that we're going to allow. But they didn't set a standard of what an acceptable bandwidth is, essentially, of like, all right, so support coordination, well, that can probably stay at the $100 because the amount of work that you've done and have to do in for it. No, I'm not saying it stays at the $100. But what I'm saying is... No. So when you're building the price guide, right, you're looking at the current max in this point in time. Yes. So let's just say that when the $114 came out, that
$100.14.
Sorry, yeah.
Actually.
It's Friday afternoon. And for the record, everyone at home, it's 5:00. But yeah, so the $100.14. When they put that in there, they used a whole heap of calculations around what the training was, what the providers had to do, what kind of legislation requirement was it, and a lot of other variable factors. And they did a whole heap of calculations and went, cool, here's the number. What they haven't done is explain that process to actually standardize it for small independents. So what's an independent overhead versus what's a large company overhead? Where's the difference in it? Where's the quality layout? Then not to forget, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of providers at home going, what about money to be able to actually reinvest as well? So back into staff and training and that sort of stuff. So it becomes a very very hard process to work out where that is. But I think the biggest failure from that level was not putting in a recommended price or a pricing average. And that's how we've ended up in this big cluster buggery that we're all in.
Yeah, because the idea was that participants would be able to even negotiate a price. And so far, I have not seen a provider who is willing to negotiate on price. A few independents will, but even then, a lot of independents are like, well, I have to pay for my insurance, I have to pay for my blue card, yellow card for, my own fuel and everything. And then you're like, okay, I get all of that, but, we were supposed to be able to negotiate and go, this is how much the person has been granted. If we can negotiate, we can get more hours out of this plan. And the NDIS has funded participants based on that idea. And then when we've gone back to them and said, well, actually, no one will negotiate with us, they go, oh, that's not our fault. Yeah, that's the money you're getting.
It's the marketplace. But the from the review on the first day of the conference dropped a submission paper on this whole topic. And one of the sort of big call outs from it was around the marketplace and lack of incentive for quality supports. And I'm really hoping that one of the elements to come out of the review would be an improvement on that, a recognition of that. What is your average? What is the standard or the accepted or recommended price, as well as in how to incentivize the market to negotiate better? Because, as you said, I know maybe a very small handful of providers around the country that actually do under market max.
Yeah,
which is it's good to see that they're doing it, and they're definitely having their own sort of things that they need to look at, because the other risk that happens is scale. As you drop it down, everyone goes, cool, let's go here, and then it topples over because it gets too many people, not enough staff, and has that scalability problem.
Yep.
Which also is a bit of a risk for a lot of smaller providers. But I'm hoping that the Bill Shorten and the rest of the agency and the review can get to a cohesive way for providers to move forward on this topic. Maybe just a recommended retail price on services, so then we've actually got some ability to start negotiating. Because without that, we can't have a standard to go, well, this is what it should be. Like when you're going into Big W and you're looking at the sales, well, you're looking against Big W and Target. Who's got the better sale on? Where's the price at? Who's a little bit higher? Who's a little bit lower? Providers really need to step their game up and do the same thing.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So now we're going to have a bit of a quick chat about some changes in the zeitgeist around plan managers and invoicing in particular.
Oh, yes. The good old invoice.
Invoices, there are certain things that an invoice must have on it. And they're things like the provider's ABN, the participant's name and address, and a few other things like that. But one of the things that up until recently has not been absolutely necessary was the actual line item number. And it seems to me that now plan managers need to see the line item number in there.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing because you work with a lot of plan managers?
I do. And I have a very strong feeling of this. If you're submitting an NDIS invoice as an NDIS provider and you don't know what the line item that you're meant to be billing for is, you need to take a very big second look at yourself and go, am I doing the right thing as an independent worker, or do I need to go get an employed job with a provider? Because quite frankly, if you're questioning a plan manager and going, why do I need to put a price guide? Because that's what they're telling you to do. That's what they are required to do. Your job is to put the information onto a invoice and send it to them for approval. You, by not putting the NDIS number, the item code, this is a big gripe for me. By not putting the item code on it, you're making somebody else who earns less money an hour making you do that job. And quite frankly, as a provider, that is your job. You are wanting to get paid. Freaking just do it. Mic drop.
Yeah, like I completely agree. It's just not that hard. You find what you're doing, you find the code,
yeah. Well,
you write it down.
The thing is, like, if you look from the NDIS, what's it called? The business terms of business, right? It goes service agreement. In that service agreement, you should have a schedule of supports. That schedule of supports should go define what that line number is. When you're looking at becoming a provider, you go, what services I'm going to go? You're looking at that and you're going, okay, cool, I'm going to do support coordination. So you go have a look at the price guide. You go, okay, cool, that's the price, that's what I'm meant to do. Oh, I could do PRC, I could do this one. Okay, so that matches my supports that I have in my schedule available. Then you talk with your participant and you go, right, here's my service agreement. Let's negotiate. Are you happy with this price? Do you want to have that negotiation? Do you not? That's where that's meant to come in.
Yes.
Then it flows through. They sign their service agreement and there's your line items. That's your codes. You know what the total available billing is. You have that mapped out. Then you do your service. And then you look at the price service agreement and go, oh, look, there's my code. And you fill that in the invoice. You put your ABN under, not somebody else's ABN, because I've seen a lot of really bad ABNs lately. Send that off. It gets approved and goes through that process. You're not meant to be making a plan manager do your job for you. I'm thinking that might make some plan managers happy and some independents not so happy. But quite frankly, you're working with very vulnerable people. If you can't get some very basic admin business functions right, should you be doing business in the first place?
Exactly. And bringing up service agreements, I mean, I have seen some shocking service agreements, and we probably will do a whole episode just on service agreements, because I have seen some shockers, and it is quite ridiculous how just poor people are at putting together a service agreement, and it's just not that hard.
Not overly. There's some very lovely basic easy read guides that are out from the agency. There's 1,000,001 consulting agencies that have templates. I don't do templates because there's 1,000,001 other agencies.
I have a service agreement template for people to purchase.
Well, there we go.
Sure. So hit me up.
But yeah, that's it. So and when you're looking at those sort of things, when you're buying templates, documents, that sort of stuff, just because that doesn't mean they're suitable for your services. You're doing support coordination, you're not doing SIL, so it wouldn't so they could look at doing that. But when you're looking at your service of supports and cancellation terms and rosters and that sort of stuff and accommodation elements, that you need to expand or add in the areas that you need to suit your business. So it's about sort of just making sure that you're covering yourself as well as protecting the participant. So everyone's clear. We use this word transparent quite a lot.
Yes.
It should be transparent. It should be crystal clear to both you, to the participant, and everyone should be happy days in utopia. Good on ABC. We got to love them.
Awesome. Well, I think we have come to the end of this episode.
Excellent. We love it.
So, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for welcoming to your home. It's been wonderful. I'm looking forward to, many more trips around and.
Oh, I did want to mention, like, there was a delay in getting another episode out because I injured my shoulder. So there's still probably going to be a few delays to come, but bear with us. We are trying to get out the episodes more often. So thanks.
Yeah. Weekly's good, but I think we like to overexert ourselves sometimes.
Yeah.
So maybe not every week, but we'll do our best to get something going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Awesome. Well, looking forward to the next one, Hannah.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening. Please share with people you know. You can email us at whatinthendispod@gmail.com. To contact me, it's hannah@tulipcoordination.com.au. And to contact Sam, it's sam@rosenbaum.consulting. Until next time, as the Green Brothers say, don't forget to be awesome.